Chicken is often seen as the safe choice. When people want to eat cleaner or make better food decisions, chicken becomes the default. It's chosen not because it's exciting, but because it feels responsible. The problem is that many people eat chicken the same way for years without questioning it. Meals feel fine at first, but over time, those habits can quietly work against digestion, energy, and overall comfort. Nothing dramatic, just a sense that the body isn't responding the way it used to. This video isn't about avoiding chicken. It's about recognizing common mistakes that feel harmless because they're familiar and widely accepted. There are 5 chicken mistakes that slowly make eating harder than it needs to be. The last one is the most overlooked, the easiest to defend, and often the most surprising once people finally notice it. Stay with me, because understanding these 5 mistakes can change how chicken fits into your meals, and I'll walk you through simple adjustments that help you eat with more clarity instead of habit. Before we get into the 5 mistakes, there's something important to understand. Chicken doesn't affect the body the same way it did years ago. Not because chicken has changed, but because the body has. Chicken doesn't suddenly become a bad food. What changes is how it's handled after you eat it. After 60, digestion naturally slows. Enzyme production decreases. Meals that once felt light and effortless can start to sit heavier, sometimes without any clear reason. Chicken is still easy to chew, easy to prepare, and easy to eat often, which is exactly why its effects are so easy to overlook. Years ago, the body could adapt quickly. Heavier meals passed through without much consequence. Leftovers reheated. A second time didn't make much difference. Cooking methods, portion sizes, and small habits rarely mattered. But later on, those same details begin to matter more. Not all at once, but gradually. Preparation and storage start to play a bigger role. Chicken kept a little too long, reheated more than once, or cooked at very high heat places extra demand on digestion. A younger body might brush that off. Later on, the same habits can quietly increase irritation, inflammation, and fatigue, even when portions stay exactly the same. Repetition adds another layer. Chicken often becomes the default protein because it feels safe and familiar. But eating the same food, the same way several times a week means any small mistake gets repeated again and again. What seems minor on its own slowly adds up, and the body responds over time. This is why attention matters now. Not to avoid chicken, and not to fear it, but to eat it with intention. After 60, the margin for error becomes smaller. Small adjustments begin to make a noticeable difference in comfort, digestion, energy, and how meals feel afterward. Once this context is clear, the mistakes that follow start to make sense. Because most of the trouble with chicken doesn't come from eating it once in a while. It comes from repeating the same habits for years without realizing how much the body has changed. So let's start with a mistake that feels harmless, almost automatic, yet happens far more often than most people ever notice. Mistake number 5. Storing and reheating chicken the wrong way. Chicken is rarely eaten fresh every time. It's usually cooked in batches, stored for later, reheated once, sometimes twice, and eaten without much thought. That feels practical and normal, especially when chicken is seen as a safe food. The issue isn't leftovers themselves. It's how long chicken is stored, how it's reheated, and how often that cycle repeats. Once chicken is cooked and stored, it begins to change. Fats slowly oxidize, proteins tighten, and reheating never returns the food to its original state. After multiple reheating cycles, chicken becomes harder to digest, even if it still looks and tastes fine. The body often notices that difference long before the mind does. What usually shows up isn't food poisoning or sharp discomfort. It's subtle. A heavy feeling after meals. Bloating that feels unfamiliar. Fatigue that seems out of proportion to what was eaten. Because chicken carries such a healthy reputation, these signs are often ignored or blamed on something else. High heat reheating adds another layer. Trying to make it safe by blasting chicken at high temperatures dries it out further, tightens the protein, and places more strain on digestion. The plate may look fine, but the body has to work harder just to process the meal. This doesn't mean leftover chicken is off limits. It means storage time, reheating method, and frequency deserve more care than most people give them. When those details are ignored, chicken quietly shifts from supportive food to digestive stress. Once this mistake is corrected, many people notice meals feel lighter again. Energy doesn't drop as sharply afterward, and digestion becomes more comfortable. And when storage and reheating are handled properly, the next mistake usually happens even earlier, with the type of chicken people rely on most. Mistake number 4. Relying on processed chicken. Processed chicken is often treated as a harmless shortcut. Store-bought rotisserie chicken, frozen breaded pieces, pre-cooked strips, and deli-style options all feel reasonable because chicken is still the main ingredient. For many people, that label creates a sense of comfort, as if these foods carry the same benefits as freshly prepared chicken, just with less effort. The issue is what comes with them. Processed chicken is rarely just chicken. It often contains added sodium, preservatives, stabilizers, and fats designed to extend shelf life and enhance flavor. Over time, when these products show up regularly, the body ends up dealing with far more than simple protein, even when portions remain modest. What usually appears isn't sharp discomfort or an obvious reaction. It's a subtle shift in how meals feel afterward, a lingering heaviness, stiffness that wasn't there before, energy that feels uneven or fades faster than expected. Because these foods are familiar and convenient, those signals are easy to dismiss or blame on something else. Another part of the problem is how easy processed chicken is to overeat. It's engineered to be soft, salty, and easy to chew, which makes portions disappear quickly. Without noticing, meals become larger, digestion works harder, and the sense of balance after eating starts to change. This doesn't mean processed chicken needs to be eliminated entirely. The mistake is relying on it as a regular protein source. When convenience becomes the default, chicken slowly stops feeling light and begins to feel burdensome. Reducing how often processed chicken appears on the plate can help meals feel cleaner and more predictable again. Many people notice less bloating, less stiffness, and steadier energy once this pattern is corrected, even before making any other changes. Mistake number 3. Choosing fatty cuts too often. Not all chicken affects the body the same way, but many people eat it as if it does. Thighs, drumsticks, wings, and other dark meat cuts are often chosen because they're softer, juicier, and more flavorful. There's nothing wrong with these cuts on their own. The mistake is how often they appear on the plate without balance. Fatty cuts of chicken place a different demand on digestion. When they're eaten occasionally, the body can usually handle it. When they become the default choice, meals begin to feel heavier than expected. Fullness lingers longer. Energy dips after eating. Digestion slows, even though portion sizes haven't changed. What makes this mistake easy to miss is that the discomfort isn't sharp or immediate. There's no clear signal saying something is wrong. Instead, there's a subtle heaviness that becomes familiar over time. Many people accept that feeling as normal and never connect it to the part of the chicken they eat most often. Portion creep adds another layer. Fatty cuts are easier to eat more of because they're tender and satisfying at the first few bites. Without realizing it, servings grow larger, placing even more strain on digestion and fat processing. The meal still looks reasonable, but the body has to work harder to deal with it. This isn't about avoiding dark meat entirely. It's about awareness and frequency. When fatty cuts dominate too often, Chicken loses its reputation as a light protein and starts to feel burdensome. Adjusting how often these cuts are eaten can make a noticeable difference. Meals feel lighter. Energy stays steadier. Digestion becomes more predictable. Sometimes simply changing the part of the chicken is enough to improve how the entire meal feels. Mistake number 2. Frying or charring chicken. This is where chicken starts to change from a light food into something the body quietly struggles with. Frying or charring chicken may taste good, but high heat fundamentally alters how the meat behaves after you eat it. Proteins tighten, moisture is lost, and digestion has to work harder than it should for a food that's supposed to feel easy. When chicken is fried or cooked until it's heavily browned or charred, oils break down and cling to the surface of the meat. Darkened or burned areas aren't just about flavor. They change how the body responds after the meal. Fullness lingers longer than expected. Energy drops sooner. Meals feel heavier, even when portions look reasonable. What keeps this mistake in place is familiarity. Fried and grilled chicken feels normal. It's been prepared this way for decades. And because the discomfort isn't sharp or immediate, it's easy to overlook. Over time, people stop noticing that chicken no longer feels light, energizing, or easy to digest. But here's where this mistake connects directly to the most important one of all. High heat doesn't just change the meat. It concentrates everything on the surface of the chicken. And when that surface is eaten regularly, especially the part most people never think to remove, the effects become harder and harder to ignore. That's why mistake number 1 matters more than all the others combined. Because it affects every bite, every time chicken is eaten. Mistake number 1. Eating chicken skin regularly. This is the mistake that quietly ties everything together. The one people defend without thinking, because it never feels like a mistake at all. Chicken skin tastes good. It feels natural. And because it comes from chicken, many people assume it's harmless, especially when it's eaten in what seem like reasonable portions. The issue isn't one meal, it's how often chicken skin shows up without ever being questioned. Chicken skin concentrates fat and whatever forms on the surface during cooking, especially when high heat is involved. When it's eaten regularly, digestion has to manage a much heavier load than most people realize. Meals stop feeling clean. Fullness lingers longer. Energy after eating fades sooner than expected. What makes this mistake so easy to miss is how automatic it becomes. Skin comes attached to thighs, drumsticks, wings, rotisserie chicken, grilled chicken, and fried chicken. You don't actively choose it. It's already there. Over time, people consume chicken skin far more often than they think, especially when chicken appears on the plate several times a week. There's no clear warning sign, no sharp discomfort, just a gradual shift. Meals feel richer. Digestion slows. The body feels weighed down in subtle ways that are hard to explain, so the habit stays in place. Because it feels normal, it rarely gets challenged. This isn't about banning chicken skin forever. The mistake is treating it as a regular part of every chicken meal. Once that pattern changes, many people notice a clear difference. Meals feel lighter. Digestion settles. Energy after eating becomes steadier instead of dropping. That's why this is the most important mistake on the list. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's frequent, subtle, and repeated without thought. Correcting this one habit often changes how chicken feels in the body more than any other adjustment. So after hearing all 5 mistakes, the natural question becomes simple. What actually helps without turning eating into another thing you have to worry about? The answer isn't cutting chicken out or trying to eat perfectly. It's stepping out of habits that have been running on autopilot for years. Chicken works best when it feels light and supportive, not when it quietly leaves you feeling heavy or uncomfortable. That difference almost always comes down to small details most people never think to question. Preparation matters more than people expect. Chicken doesn't need to be fried, burned, or heavily processed to be satisfying. When it's cooked more gently and eaten in a way that's easier to digest, the body responds differently. Meals feel calmer. Energy lasts longer. That lingering heaviness many people accept as normal starts to fade. Frequency matters too. Chicken often becomes the default because it feels safe, which means the same mistakes get repeated again and again. Simply rotating how often it appears, being mindful with leftovers, and paying attention to which parts are eaten most can change how the entire routine feels, without adding complexity or rules. The most important shift, though, is awareness. Paying attention to how you feel after meals is more useful than following rigid advice. If energy drops, digestion feels off, or comfort changes, that's information your body is giving you. Food is meant to support daily life, not make it harder. When chicken is eaten with intention instead of habit, it earns its place back on the plate. Not as something you tolerate because it's considered healthy, but as food that actually helps you feel better. And that's the real goal of fixing these mistakes. Not perfection, but eating that feels simpler, lighter, and more reliable again. If there's one thing to take away from this video, it's this. Chicken isn't something you need to fear or eliminate. It simply needs a little more awareness than most people give it. When small mistakes stop repeating, eating starts to feel simpler again, instead of confusing. You don't need perfect meals or strict rules. You just need food that leaves you feeling steady, comfortable, and supported afterward. When that becomes the goal, decisions tend to make sense on their own. If this video helped you see chicken differently, or made you reflect on habits you hadn't questioned before, consider giving it a like. It helps more people find information that's practical and grounded, not extreme. And if you know someone who eats chicken almost every day but still feels off after meals, feel free to share this with them. Sometimes one small insight is enough to change how someone eats for years. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.